this episode of the Chamber Connect podcast. My name is Colin Carmichael. I'm the Executive Director of the Huron Chamber of Commerce and the host of the podcast. I'm very pleased to have as my guest this week Frank Hurkmans. He's the President of the Goderich Port Management Corporation. Welcome, Frank.
Hey, thanks very much for having me, Colin. My pleasure.
We'll jump right in and get you to talk a little bit about yourself. You're I think about 18 months into the role because you and I
Correct.
started in our roles about the same time, I think. So
Correct.
we have about near the same anniversary in our organizations, and then.
Yeah,
And then just let us know what the Port Management Corporation, how it interacts with the town and the port, and then
sure.
we'll go from there. So
Sure. I appreciate the invite. Excited to be able to share what it is we do down here at the port with your podcast subscribers and listeners, Colin. So yeah, a little bit about myself. Again, my name is Frank Hurkmans. I fill the role as president of the Goderich Port Management Corporation here at the Port of Goderich. Have done so, like you said earlier, for about 18 months now. Prior to that, I've got 25 years experience on the Great Lakes, on both sides of the border, experience in vessels, cargoes, ports, docks, so essentially all aspects of the marine business, and have had, like I said, for 25 plus years. So I'm excited to be able to bring that wealth of knowledge that I've had from previous experiences here to the Port of Goderich. And for the most part, I think all indications are that they're happy to have me, which is important. So, a little bit about what we do at the Goderich Port Management Corporation, which essentially manages the Port of Goderich on behalf of the owners of the port, which are the town, which is the town, sorry, town of Goderich, and on behalf of the users as well. So, the GPMC essentially is a liaison between the long-term users of the port and the owners of the town. And why that's important is structurally, we are a non-for-profit organization. The users wanted to ensure that they were somewhat, their best interests were protected from the owners, which are the town. And also the town, sorry, wanted to make sure that they recognized all the revenue potential that was here with the existing users. So essentially, the GPMC ensures that the current users can continue to compete in their marketplace while the town recognizes the returns that they're expecting to see in a facility like ours here at the port.
yeah, but now
Go ahead.
well, when you say users, we're talking about Compass Minerals with the salt mine, P&H with the grain elevators are probably the two most visible ones that
Correct.
that people would recognize down at the port. Um,
Right. So on top of that, we've got long-standing relationship or agreement here with Dali, who are a local dust control company that provide dust calcium chloride for dust control on gravel roads out in the county, et cetera, et cetera. And also Universal Terminals, who are a new user of the port, most recently within about the last 5 years after the last expansion, growth expansion took place here about 4.5 years. In hand with all of those, we also have the Coast Guard is stationed here. There's search and rescue for essentially, I believe, from Sarnia almost up to Owen Sound is stationed here in Goderich. We're very, very happy to have them. We also have two different commercial fishing companies that are positioned here at the Port of Goderich. They have three vessels each, and depending upon where the fish are at any given time, are operating out of this facility as well.
Yeah. Now you mentioned expansion, and we're going to get to that. Maybe bring us up to speed a bit on the history of the port. We don't need to go back too far. We've only got
Sure.
this isn't a 2 hour podcast, but kind of historically what the port has how the port has served Goderich and Huron County, and then maybe the most recent changes before we go into what the future might look like.
Sure. Yeah. So essentially, the town took the port over in or about 1999 from Transport Canada. And prior to that, obviously, prior to that divestment of all water-based ports under the Canadian government and the opportunity for local municipalities to purchase those, it was ran by Transport Canada and looked much different than it did today. Once the town took, the municipality or the town of Goderich took over the ownership of the Port of Goderich, that's essentially when things started to change here, and that's when the GPMC was formed.
Right.
Because again, like I said earlier, that's when the users wanted to be protected, as well as the town being able to recognize the revenue expectation based on the cost of
Right.
purchase.
And you wanted that
Um,
that arm's length accountability, but to from the town, but also um, managing for the users as well.
100%. And so we're mandated by a document column that's called the OMM, which is Operate, Manage, and Maintain document that was created together with the town users and the town on how this facility would be operated and the expectations in regards to continued maintenance, in regards to the operation of the facility, the financial reporting of the facility, compliance related issues of the facility with Transport Canada, with our port security plan, and making sure that all the I's were dotted and T's were crossed in regards to compliance.
Good. So there was an expansion done recently in the last 4 years, I think it was, or just prior to COVID, if memory serves, right?
Yeah, everything was either prior COVID or
It's
post-COVID.
it's that benchmark. It's either before or after.
So in 2018, we completed our most recent expansion here, about 4.5 acres. The funding for that project at the end of the day was presented to us by the MTO in Ontario, and as well as some monies that were included of that from the GPMC itself. Since then, we have been moving plus or minus 150,000 tons of aggregate from that facility. And what it again illustrates is that, for the Port of Goderich, every time that we've found or created more additional foot space, it's been utilized to about 110%. And that message is very important when you start thinking about future expansion projects, that you can illustrate that we've put to good use every expansion that we have, that we've either created here, or when we've utilized existing dock space to a greater detail. All of that bodes well for stating our case on future expansions. When we take a look, since I've been here in the 18 months, we've certainly spent a lot of time focusing on cleaning up the facility, because you only get one chance at a first impression. We've certainly spent a lot of time and effort in cleaning up processes and procedures down here to be compliant, like I spoke about a little bit earlier. The third thing is that we have really focused an effort, or tried to focus on space utilization. So what's very, very important in a dock facility such as the Port of Goderich, because we don't have a lot of footprint currently. So essentially, just to take a step back, we've got 100 acres that we're responsible for. Plus or minus 50 acres of that would be water, including the inner harbor out to the north and south breakwall. The other 50 acres of that would be hard space. So we have 50 acres in which to operate from, which includes, like you said earlier, the Compass Minerals, the world's largest salt mine, as well as Parrish and Heimbecker as the two major users. So what that means is that of, let's say, the 35 acres remaining, we need to make sure that cargoes that come into the Port of Goderich don't stay here for a long period of time. If you use the analogy, and I've used this analogy before in different interviews that I've conducted, it's similar to the restaurant business. You can't have people coming in, grabbing a table and sitting there drinking coffee all day. Essentially, you want them to come in, have their coffee, tell their
Yep.
story, and get out so the next group can come in.
Yeah.
Same can be said for the dock business. As soon as a cargo is staged to go out, we want that time frame as short as possible. As soon as cargoes are positioned to come in, you want it to leave the facility as quick as you can so that you're ready for the next one.
Yeah.
Currently, the Port of Goderich sees plus or minus about 200 vessels a year, I would say, which constitutes, on an up year, 4.5 to 5 million tons of cargo. On a down year, let's say 2 to 2.5 years, or sorry, 2 to 2.5 million tons of cargo. So there are reasons why you see those
Yeah.
fluctuations.
Where does that put us in, the Port of Goderich in kind of relation to other ports on the Great Lakes, on the Great Lakes system?
Yeah, good question. So by volume, I would suggest on a good year it puts us top four in the Great Lakes Seaway. That would constitute Montreal west to Thunder Bay, and it would put us by volume top 10 in the country actually. So
Oh, wow.
there's a lot of other ports that are around there. We give a lot of credit to that volume and that rating coming out of the salt mine, obviously, on an annual basis.
Hmm. Yeah, so it is I, I think it's fair to say that even folks who live, almost right next door to the port don't realize the impact that it has on the, or the space that it occupies in that Great Lakes shipping economy, that it isn't, it isn't the little port of Goderich. It's the number four port in the province behind, or not but in the province, but in the, Montreal West. So Montreal, Toronto, Hamilton, Thunder Bay, and then Goderich, I guess is kind of how it would go, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't include I don't typically include Montreal in that
Okay.
because it's such a monster there, and the amount of container business and the rest of the things that happen there, it really is the gateway to the world. But here I maintain again that if not every port can be in Montreal, and not every port should be in Montreal, because there's an obvious need of all of these. I'll call them collector ports or grocery trade ports that feed those bigger, global entities like the Vancouvers and the Montreals, et cetera. Halifax would be included in that. But certainly the Port of Goderich being the only deep water port on the eastern shores of Lake Huron, there's a lot of cargoes that just make sense to have the Port of Goderich included in their logistics scenario, because of the fact that we've got cargoes that come down from Thunder Bay that right now may or may not be going to Hamilton, Ontario, and then being put on a truck and coming back west, west of London. And the fact alone that they could and should be stopping here in Goderich, discharging whatever bulk material that is, whether it's for the agriculture world, etc., discharging that and having it leave from here to the benefit of Huron County, the town of Goderich, and the surrounding area.
Yeah. Well, that's a good segue. Thanks, Frank, for doing my segue for me. But to talk about the planned expansion, because that 4 acres that you talked about, that allow the aggregates to come down from Northern Ontario, that Universal Terminals is running there. That's really just phase one of a larger expansion project that is hoped to or that will be taking place, I guess, over the next several years. So maybe talk about kind of what the potential is, and I know the details our crystal balls are a little cloudy because
Right.
we got to figure out what folks need, but some of the potential uses of that 11 remaining acres that will be expanded over the next several years.
For sure. I think it's important to note before we get too far into that discussion that the approvals from start to finish were granted at the start of the 4.5 acre piece that was
Hmm.
built, Colin, in 2018. So essentially, when folks talk about funding applications and being shovel ready, there's a lot of them that suggest they're shovel ready, but they still have a lot of work to do to buy the shovel, if you will.
Right.
But here at the Port of Goderich, we truly are shovel ready. There's some timelines that dates on approvals and things like that would need to be adjusted. But truly, when we ended up with the 4.5 acres expansion here in 2018, we were ready from an approvals process for the full 15 or 16 that we anticipate having done at some point here in the near future. So to answer your question on the type of commodity menu that we could look at once this expansion is done, and I don't bring this up from a point of what could come in here. These are all opportunities that I've been having discussions on with interested vendors. When we take a look at the Bruce as an example, Bruce Nuclear, they're going through the process of having another reactor potentially put in there. that will bode well for this expanded 11 acres. When we think about project cargo, and project cargo in the world of a port is essentially large modular pieces of infrastructure that are required for a production facility or a wind turbine farm or something of the sort like that. The potential of roll-on, roll-off cargo, which is essentially comes in specialized vessels with the component itself is already sitting on wheels, essentially, and they do exactly what it suggests. They roll it on or they roll it off, and from there it goes by truck to the end destination. Last mile, we like to call that in short sea shipping. We're going through a big exercise right now to try and understand the bits and pieces involved in having containers stored here at the Port of Goderich. The exciting thing about that is there's a lack of space right now in the Great Lakes, not only for containers to be handled full and empty, but even for storage facilities and marshaling yards for empty containers just to be housed. There's new exercises and, once you become educated in this stuff a little bit, there's exercises that take place called stuffing containers, where now instead of bulk vessels taking grains throughout the world, we're filling 20-foot containers with grain seed and different things like that.
And
So, yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
and well, without going into too much detail,
Sure,
there are literally thousands of containers heading east from Huron County right now, to ports in either Hamilton or Montreal, or Toronto, I guess, and going by truck and train, and then onto a ship, and then to their final destination. And so,
for sure.
there's a potential to shorten that. In that case, it's first mile, I guess, right? It's that, from the
Right.
facility to its
The port.
to the port, right? Rather than having to do truck and train and that kind of stuff. And I know you and I have been involved in conversations around that over the last few months.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
so there's lots of potential, but again, it's not even potential uh, for the town of Goderich. It's for the entire county, right? And beyond. To be honest, it
Absolutely.
unlocks all kinds of potential for manufacturers and the agriculture industry and all kinds of things in the county that currently aren't port users, currently don't have, beyond the grain that goes out through Paris and Heimbecker's elevators, which is significant
Absolutely.
on its own. But there's all that kind of other opportunity, and we are going to be talking about that very soon, aren't we, Frank? There's my segue for the show.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Through the Huron County Chamber of Commerce, we have the first ever Huron Marine and Economic Forum taking place on October 2nd at the Beach Street Station. Really, for anybody that's interested in understanding what happens down here at the port and where the potential really lies, it'd be worth your while to come on down and say hello to us and understand where, in a little greater detail what that potential is. Obviously, those tickets are available on the Huron Chamber of Commerce's
Yep.
website,
Yep.
and there's still some capacity left. I know tickets have been going well here over the last little while,
Yep.
and really excited to be able to participate in the inaugural event.
Yeah, yeah. Some of the speakers, that we've been able to bring, well, they were excited to come because they understand the significance, especially when we're talking about in 2025, and we're talking about supply chain resiliency, and we're talking about strengthening our domestic supply chains, access to global markets besides the United States, for example. And so an expanded port of Goderich addresses all of those concerns and more. And so it turned out to be a pretty timely event. And so
Agreed.
I know that our keynote speaker, Daniel Tish, who's the CEO of the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, is excited to to come back to Huron County. As you know, he was here in the spring. We gave him a
Yeah.
tour of the port, and he was really excited at the opportunity to come back and to be the keynote speaker for this event. And there's a couple other panels. We won't go into much detail here,
Sure.
but yeah, by the time this episode airs on the 26th, I think it is. Tickets will be you'll have to rush out and grab a ticket if you want to be there. So um,
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Dan Utish was here in the spring of this year, and a very, very good speaker, very on point with messaging and the rest of it. And regardless of everything else that's taken place in this forum, just listening to Daniel alone is worth attending for sure.
yeah, well, and his Donald Trump impression is on point, and so not to be missed just to hear him do that. But
Yeah, yeah, for
um,
sure.
yeah, so looking forward to the event. I know folks are excited to hear more about. You'll be doing a little presentation about kind of past, present, and future of the port.
Yes,
Although
sir.
we could just show this recording, I suppose, if we wanted to do that. But
Yeah. Yeah, well, the history behind the Port of Goderich goes back into the late 1800s, and
yeah.
I'm really excited to be able to make that part of the presentation October 2nd because I think there's folks in the town of Goderich and Huron County and beyond that don't realize it and would be interested in recognizing it,
Mhm.
certainly.
Yeah.
And just before we close off here, I also want to mention that we've got the expansion taking place here, Colin, but also the covering of the old Agrodome when in 2011, when unfortunately a tornado came through the town of Goderich, it was a covered tour off of 50,000 square foot bulk storage facility.
Mhm.
We're excited to be able to say that at fall 2026 we'll be recovering that again, and the cargo options to come into that will then again once expand what it is that we do here at the port. And just as a little point of interest as well, when folks think about the salt mine and they think about Parrish and Heimbecker and they think about where these cargoes are destined for, uh, please, they need to look far outside of the Great Lakes Basin. Maybe the story for the salt that's being shipped out,
Yeah.
but we are on a consistent basis through Parrish and Heimbecker shipping grains to Ireland, Norway, England, Italy. So we are we if we're not considered in the local viewpoint as a global port, we certainly should be because that is the arena we are playing in.
For sure. And one of the ways that I talk about the port as well is that it's a town of Goderich asset, but it has a Huron County economic impact. I mean, it really and even in the current state, but certainly in the future state, in terms of driving that county, in particular agriculture, right now, like you're saying with Parrish and Heimbecker, hundreds of thousands of tons of grain heading across the Atlantic and beyond, and like I said, it's easy to miss, right? You kind of get, especially people who live in Goderich, get used to just seeing the ships coming and going and not really thinking about what that actually means when those ships come in and when they head off to Europe and the impact that we have globally. So
We like to call ourselves or think that we are the intermodal gateway for Southwestern Ontario. And anybody that is out there listening to your podcast, because I know you have quite a few subscribers, Colin.
thousands,
Anybody that
thousands of people are listening. Yes.
Yeah, and I would also suggest that if they're not considering the Port of Goderich in that intermodal connection, they are not being as efficient as they could be.
Yeah. Well,
Sir.
that's good advice. I think a good place to end things off here, and I look forward to the event next week, and always enjoy when I get to head down to the port for one reason or another, and
For
and
sure.
there's just something about big hunks of steel floating in the harbor. Stuff comes
Yeah.
out. But anyway, it's always an interesting place to be, and I'm excited to follow the developments at the port over the next couple of years, and but we'll talk all about that at the Marine Forum coming up next week, and so thanks, Frank, for being my guest today, and for sharing a bit about the port.
Thanks very much, and I appreciate the opportunity, Colin, and look forward to catching up next week as well.
Sounds good.